Folks, my number one priority as your next governor is creating jobs, more jobs, and better paying jobs. In fact, we're going to be releasing our Conway jobs plan next week, and I hope you all will take a good look at it. Over the last few weeks, I've been moving around the state quite a bit and coming into many of your communities. And I have met with many business owners and employers to try to get from them what they want to see out of the next administration. Folks, being governor is about getting the right ideas. Being governor is about reaching out to Republicans and Democrats and bringing new jobs and a friendlier face to the governor's office in Frankfort. And when I say friendlier face, I say that because when I'm elected, I'm going to create an office of small business advocacy at the cabinet level in the governor's office. Too often I hear from small business owners, 75 or fewer employees, and the only time that they deal with Frankfort is when an inspector's pointed something out to them or they've got a licensing issue, or if they want to expand, they don't know how to access the economic development cabinet. So I think it's important that small businesses have an advocate right there in the governor's office. And if we're going to build the right environment for our businesses and the jobs of the future, that means we have to have the best workers. And to have the best workers, that means we have to invest in education at every level. As Ronnie said in his introduction, I sat down and helped draft House Bill 1 nearly 20 years ago. If I'm elected governor, we're going to have higher education reform 2.0. We're going to be focused on what our community and technical schools can do to meet the needs of local employers. We're going to do a better job of making certain that our higher education institutions act as a system for the benefit of one another and not against one another. If we're going to have the best education system in this state, we're going to have a workforce development secretary that is the equal of the economic development secretary. You know, folks, I just told you that story about a guy who's looking for 50 workers at $100,000 a year. You know, I go through some counties, like in Henderson or like in Marion County, they can't find enough workers. I was in eastern Kentucky this past weekend, and I'm going through counties with 20% unemployment. And where proud people know that the jobs that used to be there aren't there anymore. Folks, this is a big conversation about worker training and how do we prepare for the economy of the future. And in addition to higher ed and worker retraining and elementary education, in a Conway administration, we are going to make a capital B-I-G, big focus on early childhood education, And this, as has been recorded in some of the debates this spring, this is a big point of departure between me and my opponent. Folks, I know from the science that a child's brain is wiring itself for lifelong learning at the tenderest of ages. The science shows us that 90% of brain function is wired by the age of 5. Educating a person is like building a house. Representative Graham, I see you nodding. You lay the foundation first. You lay the foundation first and you build from there. So we are going to invest in early childhood education in a way that you have not seen before. And in order to have the jobs of the future and the educational system of the future, we've got to have the right environment for these businesses and jobs. And when I say the right environment, that means infrastructure. That means our roads and bridges. That means I'm going to continue the 80-20 bridge program to help you out with some of the stuff that's going on in your counties. That also means that you're going to have a transportation cabinet that works with you, that has the flex funds available, and that is responsive to your needs. We're going to work with you to have a 911 system that actually works. It's actually funded, because you can't create businesses on Main Street if you don't have first responders showing up on time. And folks, we're going to invest in the infrastructure of the 21st century, which is broadband. Folks, it's broadband. We're 47th in the country in broadband access. 47th. If I'm your governor next year, when I'm trying to bring businesses to this state, they're not coming if they can't connect to high-speed broadband access and participate in e-commerce. So folks, we're going to build out this public-private partnership that's been started, and we're going to make those investments. I understand the rural fabric of this state. I understand how important our farms are. I understand how important coal is. I've always been good on sportsmen's issues. And so, as your governor, we're going to do these next 4 years the Kentucky way. Not the Washington way, the Kentucky way. But working together, I know we can accomplish 3 big goals. I know we can create more good-paying jobs. I know we can invest in education at all levels so that our workers have the skills that they need. And I know we can get government to do more with less and to hold the line on taxes. You know, a governor ought to bring us together, and I intend to do that. Rural, urban, east, west, north, south. And by working together, you and I, we can make Kentucky an even better place to live, work, and raise a family.
We're about to come up on the biennial budget next, top of next year, when the House and Senate reconvene. Only 11 cents of that dollar is actually up for debate. The vast bulk of it is already spoken for. You know this. This is why you've sucked up $32 million collectively amongst yourselves to pay for things like 911 services. The reality is this state is broke. Let's not kid ourselves. I could sit here and blow smoke to you about how I'm going to give you this and I'm going to give you that and you're going to have this, that, and the other thing. Where is it going to come from? Where is the money going to come from? At the end of the day, all these things that you need and want have got to be paid for. We do not, like the federal government, have the ability to print money. So what do we have the ability to do? Is borrow it. And we've done it to the tune of tens and tens of billions of dollars. How is that going to be paid back? We're paying it back based on the assumption that our children and grandchildren are actually going to still live here and somehow manage to pay off that burden. That's a heavy load to put on their backs. It's frankly irresponsible. There are very distinct differences between the two of us that you will have to choose from. We could talk about creating jobs. I've created more jobs this month, literally, than my opponent has created in his entire life. That's a fact. Talk is cheap. And I'll tell you, there's a cost to doing everything. There's also an opportunity cost to doing things. I understand what it is to be overregulated and suffocated. I own all or part of 10 different businesses. We don't have enough educated young people because we've given this false promise that you need to go to college. That's baloney. You don't need to go to college. Now, I'll tell you, I went to college. My opponent went to college. We were blessed by that opportunity, and each of us have used our respective skills and abilities that we learned in college to do what we can. But this idea that everyone needs to go to college is nonsense, because I'll tell you what, we're preparing people for a world of frustration with tens of thousands of dollars in debt and useless degrees. I've got 9 kids. My basement isn't big enough to have 9 kids living in the basement. It just isn't. We need to have people that are trained. I'll tell you, the comment that I'm not a proponent of early childhood education is absolute bunk. It's baloney. And the fact that you would get people to applaud for the idea that somehow I'm opposed to it is nonsense. I have 9 children. You think I'm not caring about early childhood education and childhood education at every turn? You bet I am. But it's a function in the comment that I have always made. How are we allocating the dollars? Not only at the front end, but at the post-secondary end as well. We spend $1 billion a year of your money, taxpayer money, every year in this state. $1 billion on post-secondary education. It's largely allocated due to politics. We need outcomes-based funding. If we want some of these skilled jobs that we do, in fact, desperately need, how are we going to get them? Let's incent the kind of behaviors, let's incent the kind of courses, let's incent the type of discipline that is going to result in the very things that we say we want more of. This is how it's going to happen. Have outcomes-based funding. With respect to how we're going to pay for things like 911 service, enhanced or otherwise, it's going to come through dialogue with those of you who actually are where the rubber meets the road. I don't say it to be gratuitous. When I say I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican, if I'm your next governor, and I intend to be your next governor, I'm going to work with you hand in hand. This is what I've done my entire life. As you talk about the pension crisis, I know that some of you in this room are concerned for your pensions, and I don't blame you. You ought to be. And while the county employees' retirement system is more well-funded than most, it's still in dire need of attention. I'm the only one in this race that's ever worked in the pension business. I started a firm here in Kentucky in the basement of my home originally that manages more than $5 billion in pension assets. I understand this business. It's what I've done for much of my adult life. And trust me, I've been very specific as to how we're going to ensure that you get the retirement you expect. You have an expectation. We have a legal and moral obligation to deliver to you exactly what has been promised to you and to every other state employee. That's only going to happen if we're serious. Blowing smoke and making promises and saying we're going to fix this and we're going to fix that is not going to work if we don't actually put a viable plan in place. The first thing we need to do to determine whether or not you all should and could actually take your plan and carve it out, and I don't blame you for doing it because you don't want it to be robbed to try to shore up others. But before we make decisions like that, let's audit every single one of the retirement plans in their entirety, remove the veil of secrecy, and allow each of you to fully understand what's actually happening in inside of each one of these plans. Because actually, if we used what is called a risk-free rate of return, a truer metric, not these assumed rates of return that frankly are pie in the sky and that we're not getting, if we assumed a real risk-free rate of return, you would find that frankly we're more underfunded than we think we are. You think it's a problem, it's a bigger problem than you know it to be. We've got to freeze the existing plan so that those that are already in it and those that are retired from it have the opportunity to get what's been promised to them. For all new hirees coming in, they're going to have to move to a defined contribution plan. That's a reality. For those of you who think it's not going to be possible, it would be great to promise what has been promised before to anyone coming down the line. Where is the money going to come from? When these plans were put in place, the demographics were very different. You had 7 workers for every retiree, then 6, then 5, then 4, then 3. At some point, it's going to invert, and it will drive itself into the ground. And we can promise whatever we want, but I'll tell you what, there's nothing more cruel than to promise something to somebody that you know for a fact you cannot deliver. We do not have the ability to borrow our way out of this. These are real issues that we're going to have to wrestle with and address. I will take them head on.